What experience of yours is so crazy you don't tell people about it because they wouldn't believe you? I was in Washington, D.C. for a vacation. The hotel we were staying in had a conference going on that weekend, and the lobby, as well as the elevators, were packed. My cousin and I, bringing in our bags, did not wish to wait for an elevator and decided we would use the stairs. Now, we didn't realize at the time that the doors in the stairwells are only supposed to let you out on the ground floor, i.e., in case of a fire, everyone from the top can go to ground level. But someone cannot subvert the cameras by taking a stairwell up to a specific floor. For whatever reason, the door on our floor was open. We dropped off our bags in the room and proceeded back down the stairs to make a second trip for the rest of our stuff. When we returned, however, the door to our floor in the stairwell was now locked. We went down, floor by floor, trying each door with the same result. When we got to the bottom, even the ground floor door was locked. It was then that we started to panic. We were locked in a stairwell with no cell reception to tell the people we were with that we were in trouble. At ground level, there was a door, the only unlocked door in the entire stairwell, and an ominous set of stairs behind that door that led into a level below with a sign marked "Staff Only." Out of options, we ignored the sign and followed the stairs down in search of an exit. The stairs led to a corridor which 100 feet later turned into another stairwell going up. We again tried each door on each floor until one opened on about the 7th or 8th floor. When we walked out, the scenery had completely changed. No longer was there a hotel, but office cubicles and ringing phones. Understandably, we ducked back into the stairwell, confused, went up the floor and saw the same thing. Open door, many cubicles, phones ringing. When we reached the 9th floor and saw the same thing, we figured we'd investigate. When we went further into the office area, I turned to my left and see a 10-foot-tall portrait of George W. Bush. This was circa 2005, and above it, a sign that said, U.S. Department of Homeland Security and Immigration Services. Now we started to really panic, and figured let's just find the person we can and explain what happened. That first person happened to be a large African-American bodyguard who, when he saw two 16-year-olds in street clothes, was visibly shocked and took a step back. I looked at him and I said, "I think we're lost." And he said, "You absolutely are." He told us to come with him and he led us to another elevator that required a fingerprint, code, and keycard to open, and another guard in it that rides it at all times. They took us down to the ground floor where there's a guard outside the elevator and a security checkpoint at the entrance, similar to what you have at an airport. The guard freaked out as well, and they took us to a room to question us and how we had gone into the building. After 2 hours of telling them every detail of the escapade, they let us go. I personally think they were embarrassed that two kids had subverted Homeland Security and didn't want their superiors to know once they knew we were harmless. When we left, we asked where the hotel was and he pointed halfway down the block on the other side of the street. That subterranean tunnel took us farther than we thought. My grandparents were rather upset and thought we were lying when we finally met back up with them. Damn, this could be a movie. Story 2. Okay, buckle up. This is the story of the worst day of my life. My boyfriend's dog ate 1.5 pounds of chocolate thrum balls our house guests had purchased and left in their room while we went out for breakfast. We came home to find a very buzzed, very sick corgi and more crap and spew than a dog that size should even be able to produce. Meanwhile, I realized that smell isn't all just from the dog. You see, it has been raining very hard for days and turns out the lift station in our community is ancient and the motor died. I live at the lowest point in the community. Buckets of sewage water backed up out of both toilets and spilled into our home. So there are horrified guests, profusely apologizing and gagging. They had to leave to catch a plane, and my boyfriend had to leave so he could get little drunky McChockaholic stomach pumped. So there I was, 2 bathrooms full of human caca and a living room full of dog crap and spew. I cleaned it all up alone. I threw out the clothes I was wearing and took a 2-hour shower that night. It was the most disgusting mess I've ever seen in my life. I had to light like so many candles. My God, the stench. I went through more bottles of bleach than a hospital custodian. But wait, there's more. Boyfriend comes home, dog is going to be okay, thankfully. The vet had kept her overnight to observe her and allow her to sober up, but she was fine. I call her HOA and they promised to have someone come to figure out a solution to the sewage pump problem. That night I settled in for bed and fell fast asleep, just happy that the day was over. Around 6 a.m., I'm suddenly jarred awake with the sound of an incredibly wet fart followed by a putrid smell. I slowly become aware that there is now a puddle of crap less than 6 inches from my face. Turns out my chihuahua, who occasionally has bouts of stomach issues, had crawled into my bed and then proceeded to get sick right next to my face. My boyfriend had already left for work, so I cleaned up the mess, cursing my incredibly bad luck, and then walked into the bathroom to shower, only to find the toilets had backed up again. Story 3. I turned 21 on a Wednesday in the middle of midterms. My friends couldn't join me for a drink since most of them had exams the next day. I wasn't about to turn 21 without having my first legal beer, So I hopped on my scooter and put into downtown Savannah, GA on a cold January night by myself. Not many places to get a drink in that town at 11:50 p.m. on a weekday in winter, but after riding around for a bit, I found a place on the riverfront that was open. I'll never forget how the neon open sign and the old wooden door lit up the fog-covered cobblestone street. I parked my scooter on the sidewalk and walked up to the doorman. He towered over me, and to his right were hundreds of confiscated fake IDs. Without us speaking a word to each other, I stretch out my shaking hand and give him my learner's permit. He checks his watch, hands the card back, and says in the deep, thick country accent, "Happy birthday, son. Welcome." The three servicemen at the bar and the bartender watched the whole thing go down and started to clap and cheer. An hour later, we're all 4 shots deep, doorman included, and everyone is about to head out. 2 of the servicemen said they're going to the club and asked if I wanted to tag along. Sure. We walked to a nightclub just after our drag show had ended, and I spent the entire night opening up to the bartender about an ex I hadn't gotten over. Next thing I know, I'm walking up in my dorm room and there are dollar bills all over my bedroom floor. I go back the next night to get my scooter and decide to swing by the club for a drink and to find out what happened that night. Turns out, I was ready to ride my scooter home plastered. Thank God they stopped me. So the bartender and a few of the dancers gave me some of their tip money to pay for a cab, but only if I danced for it. It must have been pretty good because I still had $30 in cash after my cab ride. Bet you were shaking that thing, homie. Story 4. I was the oldest of 2 kids to a single mom. There was a nasty bug going around. Maybe it was the flu. I don't remember. But I do remember my brother got it first. Mom ended up using all her sick leave and vacation time to nurse first my brother and then herself through it. I remained healthy. Until my mom had to go back to work, of course. She had 2 jobs. No health insurance, 2 kids, bills to pay, and no choice. She left 12-year-old me home alone. Stay in bed, drink lots of fluids, call me if you need anything, and off she went. While I was sleeping, I heard someone knocking on the apartment's front door. I don't answer the door when I'm home alone and I feel like crap, so I roll over and try to get back to sleep. But I hear the door open and someone calling my name. I hear my bedroom door open next. Then I feel someone sit on the bed next to me, still saying my name over and over. I thought maybe my mom had asked her neighbor to check on me, but the neighbor wouldn't have had a key. She's not saying my name anymore. Call your mom. Get up. Call your mom. My name. Get up. Call your mom. I rolled over and there's a woman I don't recognize in my room. But I get out of bed and stumble down the hall to the house phone. I called my mom. My mom says I called her speaking gibberish. I had a very high fever. She lost her job because she walked out to take me to the hospital. She never left me home alone while sick again. But she never asked a neighbor to check on me either. A few weeks later, my mom got a package in the mail from her cousins. It was a framed photo and a few family heirlooms. I recognized the woman in the black and white photograph as the woman who woke me up. It was my great-grandmother's wedding photo from 1912. She was 16, and she came back from the grave to save her favorite granddaughter's kid. Or I had one hell of an unexplainable hallucination, considering I had only met my great-grandmother as a baby when she was 94. Story 5. I once spent a few nights in Yosemite, basically just hiking and getting buzzed from time to time. One night, myself and a group of friends hiked to the top of this little mountain near Camp Tawonga. I distinctly remember all of us seeing the meteorite fall into the atmosphere and briefly light up the sky. But that's the last thing I remember. It's as if I blinked and it was late afternoon. I got off the ground, nobody was around me anymore, and my ribs were in a ton of pain. It scared the crap out of me. I started running down the hill, following the path, hoping it would take me back to people. I still remember running and it felt like I was in a nightmare, like a Twilight Zone where everyone disappeared. Luckily, I got back to my camp and my buddy was freaking out and asking where I went and that he was this close to calling 911 to put out a search party for me. I tried my best to just wave it off, but it freaked me out so much to just lose 15 to 16 hours like that. The part that scared me the most was to this day, I have this thing in my rib where the pain was. No scar, went to the doctors about it, doesn't show up on an x-ray, non-cancerous, etc. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was totally aliens. Anyway, since you're already halfway through the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Story 6. My father was adopted and he passed away when I was a toddler. It was a closed adoption, but my grandparents who adopted him were told some things about his birth parents. Occupation, the country they were from, etc. The occupation sounded made up to me and I always thought my grandpa was just trying to make my dad feel better about the people who gave him up. Earlier this year, my aunt, also adopted but from another family, and cousins were doing ancestry DNA kits. I decided to Google the occupation and country of origin that my grandparents had been told about, and within 45 seconds, I found a man who looked exactly like my father. My entire family was floored. Turns out he's famous in his country and won some very well-known awards. I messaged him on LinkedIn, and he confirmed that his child was put up for adoption without his consent. The dates matched. The resemblance to my father was uncanny. He always thought that his son would come looking for him due to his fame. He introduced the parents of a very, very famous celebrity that almost anyone would know. We talked for a month or so, but now we don't. He has other children, and I don't think his wife liked the idea of a random grandchild coming out of the woodwork. I really just wanted to meet him as I don't have any memories of my father, and I've always had questions about my heritage. He seemed very sweet, and was devastated that my father had passed away so tragically. Story 7. One day, completely out of the blue, my daughter, 8, started telling me she wanted to look out the window to see shooting stars. I told her it's very rare to see any shooting stars where we live, Yonkers, New York. She was really adamant that we should look and try to see one anyway. So I walked with her over to our living room window and looked out with her. I swear, not 10 seconds had passed before a meteor went streaking by, closer than any I had ever seen. You could see the trail it left in the sky and it glowed bright red. She got so excited and ran to tell my wife that she saw one. My wife does not believe that me or my daughter saw a meteor that quickly. I swear in my life it happened. Another one when I was younger, I worked at a popular theme park in the UK as a ride assistant. One of the rides I worked on was the River Rapids. 2 young Scouse lads who had obviously been drinking got on, and it was clear they were going to be a pain. As their raft came towards the end, they both were running around the outsides of it. The raft hits the wall and they both fell in. This is near the lift section of the ride, which, if they'd been snagged, would have torn them up badly. I ran down and God knows how, managed to pull them both out. They were both swiftly escorted to the medical center and I'm assuming, off-park. The same day, after I finished work, I went to go and see a friend for a few hours, and on my way home, I follow a car that is all over the place. The car hits a curb and flips onto its roof. I stop my car, run across, yank all the doors open, and pull both the occupants out. Same 2 lads that pulled out of the water at work earlier in the day. How unlucky are those 2? Story 8. Back in high school a few years ago, I had a photography class with my best friend, and we went to New York City to take pictures for an assignment. We were walking through Times Square, and there's always people trying to hand out flyers or comedy club promos, bus tours, etc. This pretty girl got our attention, and she was talking to us about a book. I can't remember the name. Anyway, she's explaining this book to us, and suddenly she's like, I have someone who can talk to you about this book in more detail. Come with me. And she grabbed my friend and I by the arm and started walking us somewhere down like 42 Avenue, if I remember correctly. It ends up being a Scientology church. At the time, I had no idea about Scientology and was just curious what the heck was going on. So she walks us through the door and immediately a small group of people approaches us. She tells them we want to join and their eyes light up. One of the leaders, I guess, comes over and the girl basically hands off to him. He leads us down a hallway and says something along the lines of, we have a special movie for you. So we're brought into a small theater, if you could call it that. Maybe like 20 chairs and a small screen. He says the video lasts about half an hour and leaves, closing the door behind him. After 2 seconds, my buddy and I finally go, what the heck, and head for the door. Turns out it's locked. We looked around the room for any other door, but it was dark except for the light from the screen. I really did think we were going to get gassed. The video is about how each of us all have untapped superpowers, and this was more or less an instructional video of how to activate them. It was so absurd. When the video ended, they opened the doors and asked us to fill out a contact form. Nope. We beelined it for the door and got out immediately. Headed to Midtown Comics to catch our breaths and then went about our day. I've told people before and they've been skeptical and dismissive by saying, well, why didn't you just get out immediately? Or why didn't you break free from the girl, etc.? I don't know, to be honest. In the moment, I didn't feel threatened or scared. I wasn't even sure what was happening because it was so sudden and quick. It wasn't until we got in the little theater that we both opened our eyes and went, dude, what the heck is going on? So yeah, snatched might be a strong word, but that was my one and only brush with Scientology. Story 9. When I was 21, I was going through a really lost and stressful time in my life. I'm not religious and don't really believe in spirituality or the paranormal, but I kept having sleep paralysis episodes that seemed so real. The hallucinations, the panic, everything was very much real and right in front of me. An old lady who was my neighbor heard from my mother that this was happening to me, so she had me call this guy who apparently was like a guru with paranormal experiences like that. He basically told me to simply go through my room and every day before going to bed to tell whatever it was that was causing these episodes that it wasn't welcome and to go away. So I decided to humor him in hopes that he would make it stop, and after doing this 1 or 2 times, I wake up in late mornings and notice that I can't move. I look up and there are these 2 beings in my room talking to each other in a strange form of language, doing things like clicking and using solid tones. They notice that I'm awake and one of them slowly comes over to me on my bed and says to me, If you like, we can show you your past, present, and future. Except it didn't say it out loud like in words. It forced the sentence into my mind and I could hear it without hearing it. I know that is very vague, but it's the only way I can describe it. Basically, it was like a really loud thought. Still have no idea what it really meant by saying that, but I look back at this thing and barely am able to shake my head and let out a very weak and scared, "No thank you." And they both leave my room and I have never had another experience like that again. Still not convinced it wasn't just a wild hallucination, but definitely a weird and interesting experience nonetheless, especially with how it hasn't ever happened to me since. Makes me wonder what would have happened if I had said yes to this thing instead of no thank you. Either way, I tend to keep this story to myself as I completely understand how it sounds and would admittedly have trouble believing it if someone else told me the same story. Damn, I wish that happened to me. I would have said yes. Story 10. It was my friend's 21st birthday. We decided to grab some drinks in Minneapolis because why not spend a bunch of money on a special occasion? It was a Monday, so I figured it'd be pretty slow, and for the most part it was. We went to a karaoke bar first and left almost immediately because none of us sang. But at the second bar, we met these Asian guys who were very nice and very interested in the birthday girl's Asian friend. They learn it's my friend's birthday and buy all of us a shot. This is especially nice because there are 6 people in total at our party. I thank them and offer to get their next round, but they refuse. This was the first indicator that they were rather well to do. They proceeded to get a few more rounds until the entire party, now a total of 8, is lit. That's when a good night turned great. One of our new party financiers mentioned their favorite club is nearby. Most partygoers like us could not refuse the invite, so off we go. The walk isn't far, and when we get to the bouncer, before we're even asked for our IDs, the guy who suggested the venue change whips out a red card and we're ushered as a group to a private lounge. The only service is bottle service. I quickly scan the menus and realize there isn't anything under $100 for sale. The 2 Asian guys, who by this time are obviously crazy rich, ask the server for some patron silver. The birthday girl says, "Screw it, I'll have Johnny Walker Blue." Luckily, the party boys pay for the bottles. We have a few more drinks, everyone gets a private dance, and then the women start to dance on the stage. Our friends, ever trying to outdo their last act of charity, offer us a massive wad of singles to toss to the women. We get front row seats and begin chucking wads of dollar bills at the dancers. All is going well. We're having a great time drinking and chatting with the workers until, very suddenly, the birthday girl hurls and is rushed out of the club. We catch a bus back to our car and head home. The next morning, I've got a banger of a headache and every pocket is singles stuffed in it. Well over $100 still. Everyone in the party woke up to a similar scenario and an amazing 21st birthday story. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.